Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into the latest Wuthering Waves tier list for version 2.4, fresh as of June 2025. Whether you're rocking a 5-star powerhouse or a trusty 4-star, we're breaking down who absolutely shines as main DPS, sub DPS, and support. We know how tricky it can get keeping up with all the updates, so we've got your back with daily rank refreshes to keep your team on point. If you've been grinding Wuthering Waves and wondering which characters deserve a spot in your squad, stick around. We're gonna chat about who's dominating the meta right now and which ones you might want to rethink. So, buckle up and get ready for some friendly advice on building your dream team. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking characters in Wuthering Waves. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching! The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Lingyang, Yangyang, Jixia, and Taoki. Alright, let's talk about the C tier characters in Wuthering Waves. You know, the ones that try their best but somehow keep getting upstaged by their flashier 5-star pals. First up, Lingyang. Poor Lingyang is kind of stuck in a tough spot right now. While other 5-star characters are throwing around massive area of effect damage like it's nobody's business, Lingyang's damage feels a little underwhelming. Plus, he's lacking a dedicated Glacio support to really bring out his potential, which leaves him kind of floundering in the main damage dealer role. It's like watching a fireworks show where someone forgot to light half the rockets. Then we have Yangyang, the first free 4-star character everyone gets their hands on. She's like that dependable buddy who's solid in a pinch. Her arrow grouping skill does give you some nice utility and decent damage early on. But once you unlock those juicy sub-damage per second characters that bring powerful damage buffs, Yangyang's shine quickly fades. She's the classic starter pack that gets benched once you've got the big guns. No shame though, she does her job well enough when you need her. Now Jixia is a fun one. She's a mobile damage dealer who really shines against crowds of enemies. Thanks to her agility, she can dance around and deal damage like a pro. If you're fighting a boss, she can handle it too, as long as you're quick on your feet and good at repositioning. But here's the catch. When you're swarmed by mobs, she can quickly become overwhelmed if you're not super careful. Think of her as that nimble ninja who's amazing solo but sometimes gets cornered at the party. Last but not least, Taoki. With Jinxi's arrival, Taoki got a cool new role as a sub-damage per second character who boosts resonance skill damage while dealing quick switch hits with her Resonance Liberation. Sounds great on paper, right? Unfortunately, Taoki's got this annoying problem where her damage scaling is split between her forte and shield stats, making her kit feel inconsistent. If those scales were balanced across the board, she could have been the ultimate sub-damage per second and support hybrid. But for now, she's a bit like a mixtape with some bangers and some skips. Good ideas, just needs a smoother flow. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Jiangxin, Rover Arrow, Alto, Yuanwu, Baishi, Yuhu, and Lumi. Alright, let's dive into the B-tier characters of Wuthering Waves. Those dependable folks who might not steal the spotlight, but definitely deserve a solid shout-out. Starting off with Jiangxin, she's kind of the Swiss Army knife of the roster. Jiangxin can flex as both a main damage per second and a sub-damage per second, offering solid grouping and area of effect damage against mobs. Plus, her outro skill buffs Resonance Liberation damage, so she's handy as a sub-DPS too. But here's the kicker. She's a bit like that all-rounder friend who tries to do everything and ends up not being the absolute best at any one thing. Just like Spectro Rover, this jack-of-all-trades status means she sometimes gets overshadowed by specialists who really own their niche in the meta. Speaking of Rover Arrow, this guy's got a bit of a rough patch right now. He's fantastic at applying negative effects on enemies, but unfortunately, there just aren't enough characters that can fully exploit those debuffs. So for now, Arrow Rover mainly acts as a support character with less impressive damage output. But hold your horses. As new characters and mechanics drop, his value could definitely spike. Think of him as a sleeper pick waiting for his moment to shine. Then there's Alto, a solid sub-DPS who buffs arrow damage and holds his own with respectable damage. He's reliable, but to be honest, he's getting a bit outclassed by other sub-DPS like Mortefi, who deal damage even when they're off the field. So while Alto's steady, if you're chasing raw power and efficiency, you might look elsewhere. Yuanwu fits in that same off-field sub-DPS category and brings some nice electro damage with a little twist. He can reduce enemy vibration strength, which is basically like chipping away at their toughness meter. Sweet, right? Well, there's a catch. This effect only works if the enemy stays inside his circle of effect, and mobile enemies love to dodge that. So timing and positioning really matter with him, or else you're just throwing sparks in the wind. Now on to Baiji, the pure healer you turn to if you don't have Shorekeeper or Verena. She can burst heal using her Resonance skill and Liberation, plus keep healing and buffing the next character who swaps in for a good 36 seconds. Unlock her inherent skill 1, and she even boosts the next DPS's attack. However, her buffs only apply to that single next character, unlike Verena's party-wide buffs. So if you're all about smooth team flow and constant switching, Baiji can feel a bit limiting. Yoo-Hoo is an interesting healer-support hybrid who throws a bunch of buffs and effects into the mix, from healing to helping deplete enemy vibration strength. But here's the twist. She relies on a kit-based random number generator system for those buffs, which makes her performance pretty unpredictable. You might get lucky, or you might end up messing your rotations when the RNG gods decide to play tricks. Plus, her outro skill only boosts coordinated attacks by the incoming Resonator, which is a pretty niche thing since only a few Resonators use those attacks. So Yoo-Hoo's overall value in teams is a bit shaky. Last but not least, Lumi, a straightforward sub-DPS who shines by boosting Resonance skill damage with her outro skill. Her Forte Circuit and Resonance Liberation pack some nice multipliers, making her damage decent. The downside, when she's doing basic attacks with her 2 light modes, her damage falls off noticeably, so she's great when her Forte Circuit's full, but might feel a little underwhelming if you're just spamming regular hits. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Calcharo, Encore, Rover Spectro, Rover Havoc, Cantarella, Rover Arrow, Mortefi, and Danjin. Alright, now we're stepping up into the A tier of Wuthering Waves, where things start to get spicy and your gameplay really starts to shine. First on the list is Calcharo, an electro main damage per second unit who's packing some serious shock value. Both his skill and Liberation deal heavy electro damage, and with the introduction of Yinlin as a sub-DPS, Calcharo's damage output skyrockets. Think of Yinlin as his hype squad, pushing him to flex even harder on the battlefield. Next up, Encore, the pure damage queen of fusion main damage per second characters. When Encore dives into her Cosmos Rave state, she unleashes absolutely insane fusion damage that can melt enemies like butter. But beware, she's a bit fragile. Unlike Jiyan, her Cosmos Rave doesn't provide any crowd control, and it only lasts 10 seconds, so if you're getting hit a lot, things can get sketchy fast. Basically, if you like to live on the edge and dance around enemy attacks, Encore's your girl. Then we have Rover Spectro, the classic jack of all trades. She shines as a sub-damage per second, with her time-stopping outro skill and flashes main DPS potential with high damage Resonance Liberation. But here's the problem. Trying to do both means she doesn't quite reach the peak in either role. She's versatile, but often gets edged out by characters who specialize strictly in main or sub-DPS roles. Rover Havoc, on the other hand, is all about big bursts and stylish gameplay. Their Dark Surge state, especially when combined with the Dreamless artifact, turns them into a damage machine. Their basic attacks are the real MVP though. Maximizing those is key. You gotta be nimble with dodges to squeeze every bit of burst damage out during Dark Surge. When done right, they can wipe out single targets or mobs in no time. Cantarella is a premium Havoc character who's a must-have for mono Havoc teams. She's super flexible, able to buff both Resonance and Havoc damage, which lets you run a second sub-DPS instead of a support if you want. Plus, her off-field coordinated attacks add even more damage, making her a powerhouse who also brings some healing and sustain to the table. Basically, she's the team player who also happens to crush enemies. Mortefi is your go-to 4-star sub-damage per second with a nifty mechanic that triggers coordinated fusion attacks whenever you strike enemies. This means Mortify keeps dealing damage even when off-field, which is huge for continuous damage output. He pairs especially well with on-field DPS characters who use heavy attacks, a very common playstyle, boosting his overall value in fights. Last but not least, Danjin is a great free-to-play DPS option. She dishes out serious damage, but with a catch. Her HP drain mechanic means you need to be on top of your game managing her health. Against tougher enemies, this can get tricky, So player skill really matters. If you master the balance, Danjin rewards you with some insane damage bursts and a strong presence in battle. So yeah, a tier is where you start getting that satisfying wow factor in damage and utility, but you still gotta know how to play smart to squeeze out their full potential. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Jian, Yinlin, Changli, Xiangli Yao, Rocha, Brant, and Sanhua. Alright, now we've hit the S tier, the absolute cream of the crop in Wuthering Waves. These are the units you want leading your charge and flexing on the battlefield. Let's start with Jian, who's basically the Swiss Army knife of DPS. He dishes out insane damage both to single targets and groups, and his ultimate skill can crowd control by grouping up smaller enemies. Perfect for those chaotic mob fights. Plus, with the introduction of Whimpering Wastes, he's found a sweet spot that only made him more versatile and valuable. If you want a reliable all-rounder who can handle anything, Jian's your guy. Next up, Yinlin, the ultimate sub-damage per second who's basically a walking buff machine. She boosts liberation damage and electro damage for the team and sends out electro-coordinated attacks that hit even when she's off-field. This means she's constantly contributing damage no matter where she is, which seriously amps up her worth in any squad. Changli is the big fusion main damage per second powerhouse you want on your front line. Her fully stacked Fort Circuit lets her unleash massive fusion damage, and she even self-buffs her attack after using her ultimate to pile on even more hurt. She can double as a sub-DPS thanks to her outro skill, but honestly, it's usually a waste to sideline her from her main damage role because she's such a monster when on field. Then there's Xiangli Yao, a main DPS who's all about control and damage. He slows down enemy movement while dealing solid resonance liberation damage. Pair him with any characters, weapons, or echoes that buff resonance liberation, and he turns into an absolute wrecking ball. Mastering his kit means you're guaranteed to melt enemies faster than they can blink. Rocha is a Havoc sub-DPS with a bit of everything. She boosts basic attack and Havoc damage and brings some clutch grouping utility to crush mobs efficiently. Her personal damage might not steal the show alone, but the team-wide boost she provides is huge, especially in time-limited modes like the Tower of Adversity. The only catch? She's mostly a Havoc team specialist, so your team comp options can feel a bit tight. Brant is a fusion character who's a real team player, offering buffs and sustain without sacrificing his own damage output by converting energy recharge into attack. He's a perfect partner for Changli, but even free-to-play teams focused on basic attacks and resonance skills will love having Brant around. His outro skill combined with his Forte Circuit means he can dish out damage and buff the team like a boss. Last but not least, Sanhua, one of the best sub-DPS units in the game. She's all about prepping the next character for big damage by applying basic attack damage deepen for 14 seconds. She deals respectable damage herself, but really shines when you nail her timing, detonating ice structures with her heavy attacks for maximum impact. Master her, and your DPS chains will become downright terrifying. So yeah, if you want to build a team that absolutely crushes every challenge, these S-tier legends are your best friends. They bring raw power, utility, and a bit of flair that make every fight feel epic. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Verena, Jinxie, Jeji, Shorekeeper, Camellia, Carlotta, Phoebe, Zani, Chiacona, and Cartethia. Alright, buckle up because now we're diving into the S+ tier, where the true legends of Wuthering Waves live. These characters don't just perform, they dominate, flexing on every enemy with style, power, and game-changing utility. Let's start with Verena, the MVP of support. She's like the team's personal nurse and cheerleader rolled into one, healing everyone while buffing the entire party and throwing out spectro-coordinated attacks that deal damage off-field. Sure, she doesn't bring crit rate or crit damage buffs like Shorekeeper, but her consistent healing and off-field damage means she's always a clutch pick. Then there's Jinxie, one of the most insane spectromain damage per second characters you'll find. Her skill and resonance liberation multipliers are just bonkers, turning her into a damage machine that obliterates anything in her path. If you want to crush bosses or clear mobs with ease, Jinxie is your go-to. Jeji is the perfect sub-DPS partner if you want to supercharge your resonance skill users. She amps up Glacio damage and is literally the best sub-DPS for two of the top DPS units in the game, Jinxie and Carlotta. Her versatility makes her a must-have in a lot of team comps, especially if you're rocking Glacio or Spectro damage. Speaking of Shorekeeper, she's basically the support everyone wants on their squad. Not only does she heal continuously, but she also grants crit buffs within her Resonance Liberation field. Add in damage amplification, knockdown recovery, and KO prevention. And you've got a support character who does it all. She's the most valuable unit in Wuthering Waves for a reason. If you don't have her, good luck trying to keep up. Now, Camellia is a powerhouse Havoc DPS with flashy combos and wide AoE damage. She even comes with a free sub-DPS option, which makes building her team as easy as pie. If you want to wreck shop with Havoc damage and keep things simple, Camellia's your girl. Carlotta shines as the premier Glacio DPS, delivering consistent burst damage that scales off her Resonance skill. She pairs insanely well with Jeji, who boosts both her Resonance skill and Glacio damage. Having this duo in your team basically means you're stacking damage like a pro, making Carlotta one of the best DPS in the game. Phoebe is a Spectro DPS that loves enemies suffering from Spectro Frazzle. Even without a dedicated sub-DPS, she deals damage that rivals Jinxie's, which is no small feat. She can also act as a sub-DPS herself, amplifying Spectro Frazzle and lowering enemies' Spectro damage resistance. And with Zani in the scene, Phoebe's Confession mode just got even more useful, cementing her place as the top Frazzle sub-DPS. Speaking of Zani, she's another top-tier Spectro DPS who complements Frazzle teams perfectly, without overlapping Jinxie's role. When paired with a premium Frazzle setup, her damage output rivals Jinxie's, and since she has a free Spectro sub-DPS option in the form of Rover, she's accessible to players without Phoebe. That versatility boosts her value sky high. Siakona might fly a bit under the radar for some, but she's a powerhouse arrow character, buffing allies and debuffing enemies with arrow erosion and Spectro Frazzle aplenty. Her kit synergizes beautifully with Cartethia, who takes full advantage of her arrow erosion application and arrow damage bonuses, making Siakona an unsung hero in many teams. Finally, Cartethia is currently the king of arrow DPS. She dishes out crazy damage, applies arrow erosion all by herself, and scales off her HP stat, which means her damage potential is through the roof. She's practically replaced Jian as the premier arrow DPS and looks set to dominate the meta for a long time. So yeah, if you want to play with the big dogs in Wuthering Waves, these S+ tier champs are the ones to pick. They bring insane damage, solid buffs, and versatile roles that can turn the tide of any battle. And honestly, they just make your team look cool doing it. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.